based on what you probably heard or read or what I told you last time, you are probably under the impression that the development of modern film technology is all due to the famous invention of Thomas Alva Edison and his less than famous employee William Dickson. If you think like that, you are wrong. Together, these guys developed two of the first commercially viable film technologies: the kinematograph, basically a camera, and a kinetoscope, a single viewer exhibition device that you use to watch kinematograph films. While Edison and Dickson were setting out to make moving pictures in New Jersey, lot of other inventors were tinkering with film technology across the world. In Lyon, France, a pair of brothers saw the kinematograph and kinetoscope and said, "We can do better than that," and they did. Within 2 years, they invented a lightweight all-in-one motion picture device that made movies and exhibited them. They figured out a way to use the camera mechanism to play back the developed roll or film, projecting bright light through it to show images. Films could be projected on an entire wall or screen, letting audiences or people experience film together. By sheer coincidence or maybe fate, their surname means light. Say hello to the Lumiere brothers and the world's first projected film. Hello, this is Sudhindra SG and you are watching the 6th episode of FTII workshop on the history of cinema. And today we are going to talk about Lumiere brothers. Auguste and Leo Lumiere were born in the 1860s in eastern France. In 1870, their father moved the family to Lyon and opened a small factory that made photographic plates. The family business ran into the edge of bankruptcy until the brothers took over. They devised machines to help automate the plant and invented a new and improved photoplate. By the time they started experimenting with film technology, the Lumiere brothers had lot of experience in business, engineering, manufacturing and photography. They were intrigued by the Edison's motion picture devices but quickly saw the flaws. The camera was hard to move and only one person could watch a film at a time. So they went back to the basics and made a better camera. Remember the intermittent stop and go mechanism? How motion picture cameras need to stop the film long enough to expose one frame to light before moving the roll to the next frame? Well, the Lumiere brothers developed a device around the stop and go mechanism which was used in sieving machines. They weren't the only ones tinkering with this engineering problem. Inventors were working independently all over Europe and United States, putting up pieces together that will one day become the cinema. In 1897, the German optician turned film pioneer Oscar Messter perfected his design for the stop and go mechanism called the Maltese cross, named after the medal with the same shape. It was also called as the Geneva drive because it was first invented in Geneva, Switzerland for use in mechanical watches. Mester's device has really stood the test of time. We still use a version of it in most projectors today. But back to the Lumieres and their motion picture camera. Their whole contraption was a compact portable box. It was light enough for one person to carry. The camera was operated by a hand crank, so it didn't rely on an electric power source. It used the same 35mm film as Edison's kinematograph, but it could also develop the film that it shot. No more sending film off to a lab. But that's not all. Once the film has been developed, the Lumiere device could be reconfigured into a projection machine. So many things in one. They could run the developed film back through the intermittent stop and go mechanism, and with a bright light source, the images could project onto a wall or a screen. This device could do it all. You could carry it with you out into the world, capture footage, develop the film, and then project it anytime, anywhere, any way you wanted. Compared to the kinematograph and kinetoscope, it was kind of a technological leap from an old school flip phone to a smartphone. The Lumiere brothers wanted to call their invention the Cinematographe, which means writing with movement. Like Edison, the Lumiere brothers were savvy businessmen and secured international patents on all their technology. Before the public unveiling of their cinematograph, they held a series of private parties where they projected films for groups of distinguished guests, stoking interest and excitement. And then in Paris on December 28, 1895, at the Salon Indien in the basement of the Grand Café, Auguste and Lumiere screened a series of 10 short films and changed the world forever. Now, I should mention that this wasn't technically the first public screening of a motion picture. The honor, as far as we know, goes to Woodville Latham, an American chemist and kinetoscope owner who projected a film of a boxing match in New York in May 1895. What set the Lumiere brothers apart was that they played up the intrigue of their device and gained publicity, plus their superior image quality and the sheer number of films they presented. So the credit for the first successful public screening of a film typically goes to Auguste and Lumiere. Among the films the Lumiere brothers screened that night was The Train Arrives at Ciotat Station. In the film, a train arrives at a station in a single uninterrupted shot, comes towards the camera, stops, and the passengers disembark. Legend has it that when the audience first saw this movie projected on the wall, it was so unfamiliar and realistic that they ran screaming from the theater, fearing for their lives. The story of the screaming audience in the Grand Café also reveals the power film has to create as a communal experience. While the technical wizardry of their cinematograph was groundbreaking, the unique group psychology of movie-going may have been the Lumiere's greatest contribution to film history. When you are in an audience watching a film, you are having a specific personal experience, but you are also part of a pop-up community. Now, the Lumiere brothers' films all shared a few characteristics. They were silent, black and white, and uninterrupted shots that lasted less than a minute, much like the film out of Edison's Black Maria. But rather than capturing stage performance and skits, the Lumiere films were mini documentaries known as actualities. They focus on slices of everyday life. Two babies fighting over lunch, a group of workers leaving a factory at the end of the day, and of course, trains arriving at stations. These films were financially successful right out of the gate. The Lumiere brothers' first screening brought in 35 francs at 1 franc per person, and within a month, they were making 7,000 francs per week. That's counting 7,000 people viewing this film. Meanwhile, other inventors were making cinematograph-like devices with cool names like the Vitascope and the Cinematographe. They were directly inspired by the Lumiere brothers, while others were independent. Thomas Edison saw the financial success the Lumiere brothers were having and wanted to have a big piece of that action, abandoning the kinetoscope, and he jumped into the theatrical projection. Edison and other inventors also began experimenting with longer films, but there was a big problem. These longer film strips kept tearing inside the projector, and to solve this problem enters Woodville Latham, the guy who really held the first public projection of a movie. He held the patent for the Latham Loop, a different way to feed film into a projector, which involved a pair of small loose loops of film, one above and one below the projector's lens, held in place with extra sprockets. This helped protect the film from vibration and tension, which could lead to damage. In 1895, another pair of early film pioneers, C. Francis Jenkins and Thomas Armat, used the Latham Loop in a projector of their own design and called it the Vitascope. Edison saw this device, brought it outright, and released it as the Edison Vitascope, giving the original inventors almost no credit, because that's how Thomas Edison did his business. Throughout all this experimentation, most people thought film as a fad that would burn brightly for a few years and then disappear. Even the Lumiere brothers got out of the movie business in 1905 because they didn't see a future for film. They thought that films had no future and just kept concentrating on making photoplates, and later on went on to develop their own color film technology called the Lippmann process, which we are going to discuss later. But film was going into something bigger, a method of mass communication that was starting to make itself indispensable. As time went on, filmmakers would take cinematograph to far-flung places, capturing movies of the Amazon basin, the pyramids of Gaza, and the ruins of ancient Rome. Suddenly, you could walk into a theater in Delhi, Mumbai, or Paris and watch people climbing the Himalayas. In some ways, these kind of films knit the world closer together, showing people sights they had never experienced in real life. You can even compare film history to the early days of YouTube. 3 employees of Elon Musk PayPal in 2006 came together. Once, Javed Karim shot a video of a dinner party and wanted to share it with Steve and Chad. And to make this sharing possible, they set up the idea of building a video sharing platform. Basically, they started it as a dating site for girls to upload their videos instead of stills, and later they allowed it to be used to share any video. Sharing started with Javed at the zoo and cat videos and kids on dental anesthesia. And these kind of videos later were replaced by great contents. And today, world learns through YouTube and is the source of knowledge to any learner on this planet. Today we introduced you to the Lumiere brothers and their Cinematographe, the all-in-one camera, film developing lab and the projector. We learned about the first public film screening and how people were beginning to have collective movie-going experiences as well as the personal ones. We discussed actualities, the snapshots of everyday life, and how some filmmakers were beginning to push the envelope, exploring the world and making longer movies. In our next episode, we will discuss about how film started to tell stories and how editing came into existence to narrate visuals with special effects. Thank you.